Welcome back. This is 5 things to know about Schiaparelli Jewelry. I've been researching Schiaparelli for over 4 years now, and so this is my favorite and my largest collection, and I'm anxious to bring it to you today. Okay, we're going to take a look at a couple of books that I've used as references. I have a lot of reference books on Schiaparelli, but we're going to take a look at a couple of things because a lot of the really early Schiaparelli is in museums only. So let's switch to the books. Okay, fact number 1, Elsa Schiaparelli, if you don't know who she was a really famous Paris couture designer. And her heyday, I would say, was in the 1930s, 1940s. And what you're looking at here is a picture of her that came in a museum exhibit catalog that was done in 2003 in Philadelphia. As I said, she's a famous couture designer, and this is an example. This dress is called her lobster dress. So she was heavily influenced by surrealist artists like Salvador Dali, for example. And I put this little card next to it because I just thought it was so cute. Most of the jewelry from the very early days, again, famous designers. She collaborated with many different jewelry designers. But here's an example of one that you'll see, and I think this one is in the Met in New York City. This is a, obviously clear lucite type of necklace, and when somebody wears it, all you see are these insects that go all the way around. So she was definitely out there in her designs and some of the things that she created, but a real icon. She was the arch rival to Coco Chanel, so that gives you a little better time frame. And she was in Paris in the Place Vendôme, but she shut down in 1954. And when she did that, she went off to write her own autobiography, and it's called Shocking Life, and that's by Elsa Schiaparelli. And the pink she's famous for is called Shocking Pink. As I said, Elsa Schiaparelli's, her couture house was in Paris, and the jewelry, some of the jewelry that was designed to go with the collections that she created were exported to the US. Some of the jewelry was in the 1930s. And this is an advertisement that talks about D. Lissner. I don't know if you know Lissner, but Lissner was well-known jewelry, costume jewelry as well. Not at this time frame, but was later than this. But in the 1930s, this is a 1938 advertisement that announces the exclusive rights to distribution of Schiaparelli jewelry that was done in Paris and brought over to the United States. And this one all talks about this Victorian-looking piece. And I have 2 actually, but I have this very small example of this exact jewelry. So that's late 1930s, and the signature on the back of these was a small letter print name stamped on a cartouche on the back, and this one has it as well. So that tells you a couple of things. Lissner distributed, they were signed pieces. There's not a lot of this around. I just happen to get a couple pieces, and when you do, you have to pay exorbitant fees for it. But I wanted to have at least an example of it in my own collection. There was a point in time where Schiaparelli jewelry started manufacturing in the United States. And what you're looking at are a couple of examples of pieces that would have been done in the late 1940s, and I'm talking about like very late 1949 to the very early 50s by the Ralph DeRosa company. And this is where my research comes into play. It's very hard to find out exactly which pieces DeRosa did, but based on the time frame of when I believe that he manufactured, I think that for my own collection these are some good examples. This is called a watermelon. You might have seen this in other pieces of jewelry, but it's called watermelon, or the technical name is actually vitrail. And it was done in all different sizes and shapes. Schiaparelli was not the only one that used these stones. They're green on the outside and pink on the inside. That's why they call them watermelon. But they had a lot of pieces. Now the thing about the Schiaparelli side is they're signed, so you'll know that. And then this is very chunky. DeRosa used chunky, unusual stones, and this is an example of that. Now what happened in about 1954 is the jewelry became so popular and there was so much of it being bought in the United States that they opened up a production facility in 1954. And this is where my research really came into play, because that's not discussed very much in the current books. Hopefully someday I'll write an article or a book myself and talk about what I believe happened after 1954 with this jewelry. Okay, fact number 3 is talking about signatures. It's always important, again, to look at the back of the jewelry and look for the signatures. If you are looking for Schiaparelli, you're going to see a lot of listings that say unsigned Schiaparelli. And I really want you to really beware about that, because the prices that you have to spend for Schiaparelli, you need to know that you're really getting what you're paying for. We talked earlier about the mid-1930s and how they had the Schiaparelli in small print. Here is a couple of other examples. Here is the tag that went with sometimes a Schiaparelli piece. It says Schiaparelli Jewels on that side. And then if you turn it over, it said designed in Paris and created in America. And a little price down there, although this one doesn't have it. But that's the original tag that came with the Schiaparelli piece. There's a couple of others, and this, I'm hoping, is a good example. You can see it on the oval cartouche. This is Schiaparelli in capital letters with the C, and we know the C from other videos is copyright, and that would be post 1955. What we're looking at here is one of the high-end sets of Schiaparelli. This is very, very popular, especially these big, wide, chunky bracelets. Very popular, and the prices in the market reflect that. But we were talking about signatures, and so what I wanted to show you is this set. And we call those parures if they have more than 3 pieces in the set. In this one, the bracelet, the earrings, the necklace are all signed, but the brooch is not. So what I'm trying to show you is that sometimes there's a piece or two that is not signed, but in general, most of it's signed. So I want you to remember that. I think that the most important thing is, if you're going to invest in Schiaparelli, get the signed pieces. Fact number 4 is about the components that were used in the jewelry. And what I'm showing you in this first line is sets of earrings that are, done in gold plated, or they're done in silver plated, or they're japanned. But all of them have Schiaparelli in script across the clip. They're all 3-hole clips, and they have a patent number on them. And some people get confused about patent numbers because they think, oh, I'm going to be able to find out exactly who did this design and when they did this. But in this case, the patent number, and there's one of 2 different patent numbers, is really got to do with the design of the clip mechanism and not the design of the earrings. The other component that was consistent in some cases is the end of the necklace. Japanned, kind of a darker metal, gold, but both of them are using these same ends. Now, necklaces use these hook And when they do use the hook, you're going to find that end. But there are necklaces that have fold over, and they're either plain or they're decorated. And there are ones that are chains as well. So there's some different types, but when there's ones like this, it's always like that. And that's it for the component side of things. Again, my recommendation is look for the signatures. It's most important. Fact number 5 is that Schiaparelli jewelry often used very unusual stones. We saw the watermelon, I showed you that. That's the green and the pink. Another one was the lava rock, and if you see that, it's right there in this bracelet. And it's a very bumpy looking stone. Very, very unique, very different. I want you to understand that if you found lava rock in a piece and it wasn't signed, that doesn't mean it's Schiaparelli. And that's where the confusion gets in on some of the listings on the websites. So here's another example of unusual stones. She used these big, chunky cabochons, like these red glass stones that are in this set. This particular bracelet I was happy to find. I have it in white. It also comes in a beautiful aqua blue. But just to give you an idea, the gentleman that I found in Brimfield who had the aqua blue wanted $1,500 for it. And that's a little bit beyond my budget. Another example is this, they call it iridized molded leaf that is in, again, remember I told you these really popular, big, chunky bracelets that she did, and some unusual stones in that as well. Some faceted, some not faceted. But just some really unusual stones. There's also one that looks like a gumdrop, and there's another one that looks like a molded rose. And that one, again, I've seen knockoffs of it that were sold as Schiaparelli, and they're not. So just, buyer beware, note some of these things. One thing that I found in my most recent research is that in 1959, there was a value line brought to market by Schiaparelli. And I noticed when I had all these different pieces that there's a big difference in quality of them, and I thought it would be very odd if it was just one manufacturer. But I think it was the same manufacturer, but they just use a little bit, I don't want to say lesser, but it brought to the market, for less than some of the other pieces were. So here's an example. You can feel it in the weight. These are plastic. It's still signed Schiaparelli. It's still Schiaparelli, but it's just, I believe, from her value line of. And this one, I'm not sure. It's kind of uses some of these special stones, but a lot of it is plastic. Some of it's glass, so I'm not sure if that's value line or not. It may not be. As I said, I have been collecting and researching Schiaparelli now for 4 years. And the way that I started this is I purchased a collection. I purchased the whole collection from a lady who didn't want it anymore. Had been collecting it for years, trying to get the sets. The prices got too high, and so she was willing to let her whole collection go. And it was 68 pieces of Schiaparelli. And plus, she sent me perfume bottles and some scarves, and there's all kinds of things associated with Schiaparelli, hat boxes, etc. So I got all this, and I started looking through it, and I just wanted to know more about where this all came from and who created this really spectacular jewelry. And so I had just retired from IBM, and so it was all perfect. It all fit together. So I really went, extreme on this. I read everything I could get my hands on about Schiaparelli, including biographies, autobiographies, museum catalogs, the web, of course, and just, a lot of information. And all I really ended up with was a lot of conflicting information. So I started to do my own research. I felt like I needed to do some primary research. And that took me literally all over the world. I went to the Library of Congress in Washington and spent a weekend there going through some of their archived information from Vogue magazine, that type of thing, looking for original ads and trying to find out more about manufacturing. And then I went to Paris and there was an exhibit there. This search has taken me all over. Most recently, Women's Wear Daily released some of their archived information onto the internet, and I was able to access that in Chicago through my alma mater. So it's been quite a journey with this, and I still feel like there's a few questions that I have that are unanswered, and I'm going to continue to do this research. Of course, along the way, I've bought more jewelry, I've sold some of it, but it's been a great journey. It's always been interesting. She was an absolutely fascinating person and very, very creative. She worked with so many people on designs of her jewelry and accessories that went with her fabulous fashion. So it's been fun, but I wanted you to understand, this is an in-depth, this is like my one area where I've really put a lot of effort and energy into, but it's all been fun.